Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. Coming back to Dragon Link, which I've been wanting to come back to for a minute here. This is one of those decks that I'm like constantly looking to update and seeing if I can improve just because there's so many different ways to build the deck. I'm like always shifting the build and like trying to figure out what exactly I want in the deck. Lately, in this iteration that I haven't been testing much before, I'm testing some Starliege Seyfert. This card is an extremely good normal summon for the deck, allowing you to pull either Wyverburster or Collapserpent from the deck. Basically, you summon it, you tribute it, and then you typically add one of these two, as you get to add a dragon whose total levels are the ones sent to the graveyard, but again, often we're just tributing itself to add one of these two, usually the Collapserpent, since the Starliege Seyfert is light. From there, Collapserpent can be used to go into the Striker Dragon, that will then search the Wyverburster, you can summon that, and then potentially go for Romulous, and then you can just kind of start your plays out from there. And in this particular build, once you go for Romulous, or the Dragon Ravine off Romulous, we can then often send an Absorouter Dragon in order to potentially search out some more Rokket plays, like maybe even a Tracer that we can special summon. Of course, the Seyfert, like I said, does consume your normal summon, but I think it's more than worth it. So since we added the Starliege Seyfert, and it does have an ability to, return level 8 light or dark dragon monsters to the hand, I did decide to finally craft the Chaos Dragon Levianeer. This is a card that's actually really, really good for Dragon Link that I just haven't gotten around to crafting or testing yet. But it's seeing it play in enough of Dragon Link builds now. That's the other thing, is that it's always been kind of like borderline, according to past statistics, right? As far as like how often it's actually included in the deck. In the past, it's hovered somewhere closer to 50%, but lately it's kind of skyrocketed up to like 80-85%. So decided to go ahead and give the card a try. Card's actually really, really good. It has a lot of applications, right? It might seem on the surface like, oh, this is definitely like a going second card, and this is definitely like a going first deck, but if you banish 3 dark monsters, the ability to shuffle a random card from the opponent's hand back into the deck is really, really strong. It is a very good going first ability. There are some niche case scenarios where you can use the only light effect as well, to special summon a monster from your graveyard and then like keep comboing. Like you can use it as an extender in that regard. And then, of course, if you banish both light and dark monsters, you can destroy up to 2 cards in the opponent's field. That obviously is more better for going second, but is also just a good option to have going second. This free 3000 beat stick that can clear away 2 of the opponent's cards is often enough to ensure that you have lethal there. So I think it's a very nice inclusion in the deck. Again, Starliege Seyfert can recycle it if it ends up in the graveyard, either by discarding or sending it, or just it naturally dying. It's definitely another option there. And then plus, of course, it can also be a potential target for the second effect of Chaos Space as well as there. Or you can also search it with Chaos Space if you discard a light monster, because I believe it's dark? Yes, it's dark. So if you discard a light monster, it can also be searched off Chaos Space, which is another nice plus to it. In this build, you also might notice that we're playing 2 Wyverburster and Collapserpent each. In the past, we've been playing, I think, 2 Wyverburster, 1 Collapserpent, but with the Starliege Seyfert, we're going to want multiple copies of each. It also goes a long way. Like, I thought about even before I was included Starliege Seyfert, including a second Collapserpent anyway, because, even though you can't summon the third one that you search, like, if you summon Collapserpent and then send it and search Wyverburster, and then send Wyverburster and search another Collapserpent, you're not going to be able to summon the second Collapserpent, but that doesn't mean it's not useful. It's definitely still a very good potential discard target, often for Dragon Ravine, like I mentioned. And then, like I mentioned with Dragon Ravine, we're often pitching the Absorouter Dragon, which we're playing 2 of in this build, to search a Rokket monster. Absorouter is not only good as a searcher off of the Ravine, but also just a good extender as well. We're playing a single Noctovision Dragon for another extender as well. I actually was testing this build at exactly 40 cards, but I ultimately decided that it was just like we had like a little too few extenders. Like it was just too few extenders. So I ended up adding the Noctovision Dragon as and also the Rokkey Calibur as cards number 41 and 42. Rokkey Calibur is also a fairly solid extender. Can be summoned to any zone of Dark Link monster points to. The effect to summon a Dark Dragon. Excuse me. The effect to summon a Dark Dragon from hand by tributing it doesn't come up super often, but it's not entirely irrelevant. It's also a level 4 tuner, which sometimes, we have like the Rokket Tracers, right? But sometimes you do need a little extra help as far as finding another level 4 tuner, particularly one that can summon itself, and that's where Rokkey Calibur comes in, so just another extender as well. And of course, if you're not using it as a tuner, it can also always be used as a link material there as well. Rest of the deck is fairly standard as far as stuff we've been playing. I don't know if we've been playing the PSY Frame engine. I can't remember it. I just, I could go back and look, but I don't remember off the top of my head exactly, like, how often we've included this engine in the past. I think it's really, really good in this deck. There are a lot of points where you're activating monster effects where you actually don't have anything on board. And as you would expect, it's also the point at which you're most likely to get hit with negates. So I really like the PSY Frame. Oh, and also, if you happen to drop this on your turn, then being able to go into the Chaos Ruler like for free without having to invest any other materials will like hugely open up your combos, freeing up your normal summons, freeing up your first, like again, your first level 8 synchro that you have to make, enabling you to go more easily into an Omni Negate like Borreload or the hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss there. So yeah, that's another cool thing about the PSY Framegear Gamma in this deck. It's not only like another form of disruption / protection as it is in every deck, but if used during your turn, it's an extremely powerful extender as well. Which is another reason I think it's smart to include it in this deck. There were a lot of variations where, again, I tried to see if I could cut it down to 40 cards, and one of the variations did take out the PSY Frames, but I missed them like almost immediately after taking them out. So yeah, it's funny, like I've been mentioning, that was kind of my deck building challenge here, was can I get Dragon Link down to 40 cards and still have it feel good to operate? And right now the answer kind of feels like no, honestly. Even at 40 cards, it feels like you're just missing something, whether it's, again, a little bit more disruption / protection in the form of the PSY Framegear, a few more extenders in the form of, like, well, again, just this deck isn't not wanting for extenders. Again, I just decided to try Rokkey Calibur and, the Noctovision there. Noctovision especially being good for being able to cycle itself into another card draw, so you don't like lose advantage off of using this as an extender, which normally, that isn't a big deal anyway in this deck, but the fact that it can then make up for itself makes it even better there. So extra deck is a little bit different here. We are including some cards that we weren't before. The Dillingerous Dragon, I haven't actually gotten a chance to summon this yet, but being able to special summon itself from the graveyard when you special summon a Rokket monster, that's not a difficult condition to fulfill, and having an extra link too makes it really easy to then pivot into like a Borreload Dragon, which ideally, we'd be ending with this card on turn 1. Not always feasible. In this build in particular, it is a little more difficult just because we don't have quite as many combo pieces. But that said, it's still not too difficult to go into sometimes. And again, the Dillingerous Dragon, while I haven't gotten a chance to utilize in this manner, in theory should make that easier to then go into. I also decided to include a the Dharc Charmer, which I don't think we were playing before in the extra deck. Just because it's, of course, with Branded Despia running around as much as it is, this card is, and the mirror match as well, this card is very good, especially in the mirror match in particular. So yeah, I wanted to include it in the extra there. Alright, so that about does it for the build. I think that's all like the major changes that we have undergone for this iteration. I really like this iteration in particular. I think in the future, when I improve upon Dragon Link, I'm going to stick to a build that focuses more on Starliege Seyfert, as opposed to the big normal summon we were playing before was the 3 Black Metal Dragon with the Red Eyes Darkness Metal, which are fine. And I could even see myself including, because I thought about including like one Black Metal Dragon, 1 Red Eyes Darkness Metal, and then like a 1-for-1 or something, which I really should have been playing 1-for-1 in the build of 3 Red Eyes Darkness Metal looking back, but anyway. So that could still be an inclusion in addition to the Seyfert, but, or the Seyfert, I keep saying Seyfert, it's Seyfert. Anyway, the Seyfert here I think from the testing I've done so far is the better normal summon over the Black Metal Dragon, but we will see how that pans out in the future. So let's go ahead and break down the list card by card here, and then we're going to take a look at some gameplay. We're playing 1 PSY Frame Driver, 1 Effect Veiler, 1 Rokket Synchron, 3 Maxx, 2 PSY Framegear Gamma, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 White Dragon Wyverburster, 2 Black Dragon Collapserpent, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 1 3 Rokket Tracer, 1 3 Rokket Tracer, great, 3 Rokket Tracers, 1 Rokket Recharger, 3 Starliege Seyfert, 1 Rokkey Calibur, 2 Absorouter Dragon, 1 Noctovision Dragon, 1 Chaos Dragon Levianeer, 1 Nibiru, the Primal Being, 3 Chaos Space, 1 Dragon Ravine, 1 Boot Sector Launch, 3 Quick Launch, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, and then finally 2 Infinite Impermanence. The extra deck is going to contain 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, 1 Guardragon Pisty, 2 Striker Dragon, 1 Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, one Dragunity Knight Romulous, one Dillingerous Dragon, one Quadborrel Dragon, one IP Masquarena, one the Dharc Charmer Gloomy, very redundant name, one Nightmare Unicorn, one Access Code Talker, and then finally the Borreload Dragon. Alright, that's going to go ahead and cover the deck now. Like I said, let's go and take a look at some gameplay. Alright, so this first duel here is going to be against Sword Soul Tenyi, which is interestingly enough playing a little bit of a DPE engine here. But we won't get to see too much of that. This duel is actually going to be a pretty short one. It's going to be more about establishing a turn 1 board, this replay, this game that we're going to see here. So, looking at my opening hand, the thing about Dragon Link is, like, this is a very freeform deck, like I think a lot of people know. So, what you combo out with, of course, every deck, what you combo out with depends on your opening hand, but with Dragon Link, that very, very much varies accordingly. So, I'm looking at this hand here. We've got a couple of options for comboing, right? Mainly, I'm looking at the Quick Launch into a Tracer, followed by specialing the Absorouter, and then potentially, as normal, some of the Rokket Synchron to bring back the Absorouter a bit later. Well, ideally, I would go into a level 8 Synchro and then bring that back with the Rokket Synchron, and then go into a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. But we could also potentially go into a Borreload using the Rokket Synchron to bring back the Absorouter. Also thinking about if I want to Synchro, or if I want to, like, pop the Absorouter with the Tracer, or if I want to see if I can maybe use it as a link material. There's a lot of different options I could do with this Router Dragon here. This hand in general, even though, like, you are fairly limited just based on opening these 3 as combo pieces here, but there's still quite a few different things you can do there. So all roads are going to start with the Quick Launch here, so I'm going to go ahead and play that. Opponent's got a Maxx. This is perfect. This is literally exactly what I wanted to happen. I was really hoping for a Maxx or an Ash Blossom in response to particularly this Quick Launch, because as you can see, I've got the PSY Framegear Gamma in hand, and I was thinking to myself, like, if I can get this Gamma off and make the Chaos Dragon Levianeer, or not the Levianeer, the Chaos Magical Dragon, before the rest of my plays, it's going to make the rest of my plays much easier to figure out. So we did get our wish here. So yeah, not only do we get to stop our opponent's Maxx, but we get a very powerful extender in the process. This is again what I was talking about in the deck profile, about like how and why PSY Framegear Gamma is just so good in this deck. So, like I mentioned, to go into the Chaos Row. I also want to go into this first because it's going to determine, you know, what I excavate here is very much going to determine how the rest of my plays play out here. So, yeah, we've got more than enough options here. I'm going to end up adding the Rokket Recharger. Definitely don't want to add the Fairy Tale Snow, and we already have a Tracer on board, so I don't feel the need to get that necessarily. I'm going to pop a Levianeer here for Tracer's effect, because I can bring it back with either its own effect and or Rokket Synchron's effect anyway. And the Absorouter, I am definitely planning on just saving for a little bit later in the turn for a potential discard slash combo extender piece. So, I also want to talk about this play here. This is, even though, again, this is a very brief replay, I want to show this play here. I want to show this game in general because it shows a couple ways of playing around disruption from the opponent and how we can kind of turn that, not just into like stopping the opponent's disruption, but then also turn it to our advantage. We did that with the PSY Framegear Gamma. That's fairly straightforward. But here I was also able to do it with the Fairy Tale Snow. This is something we've done in past decks, I think particularly in Brain of Despia when we're fusing stuff, right? If our opponent imperms a monster on the board, but then we use an effect that takes it off of the board, the effect is still going to resolve. Now, obviously, I would like my Striker Dragon around to be able to link with it, but having the Boot Sector launch is absolutely more important here, as I do have like multiple monsters from my hand that I can summon off of it. So, what I'm going to do is actually activate the Fairy Tale Snow's effect, banishing all the stuff out of my graveyard that I'm not going to really need, right? The Quick Launch, the extra PSY Frames, the Ash Blossom, the Dragon Ravine, and the extra Rokket Tracer because I've already got another one in the graveyard. And then as my 6th card, as you can see, I banished a Striker Dragon. And now, because Striker Dragon is no longer on the board, the Imperm is not going to negate it, it's going to resolve, and I'm going to get my Boot Sector launch. On top of that, I also get the Fairy Tale Snow on the board to act as a level 4 non-tuner. This hand did notably lack the Collapserpent or Wyverburster, so I wasn't able to necessarily combo out. Well, we had the Rokket Recharger, but I wasn't necessarily able to combo out any further solely based on what was in my hand there, as far as making a level 8 Synchro go. Well, again, because we already made the Chaos Magical Ruler, I'm thinking more of making the Borreload Savage Dragon there. I could have done that with the Calibur and the Fairy Tale Snow on board, go into the Borreload. Well, of course, I'd probably want a better Link monster in the graveyard than just... Well, we didn't have a Link monster in the graveyard, it was just Striker Dragon, so... I'm thinking, you know, we activate Boot Sector Launch, we special the Recharger, maybe not even Normalless Synchron, and then we can like special the Router, go into... we had so many different plays there, but it would not have been hard at all to end on like Borreload, Savage Dragon, and Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend Abyss, just looking at what's in my hand and what I had access to. And who knows, like I could have maybe even climbed to a Borreload, but I think that would have consumed enough materials where we could have just made the 2 Omni-Negate Synchro monsters and kind of called it a day there. And given that our opponent was going to be starting with 4 cards because they used other 2 disruption targets, like that's a pretty secure lethal. The opponent noticed that too and decided to just go ahead and concede it to us. So yeah, it might seem like on the surface, like this deck is really susceptible to disruption. And like, oh, if you don't open Called by or Crossout, like how can you even play through your opponent's disruption? You have so many choke points, but it's one of those decks where like we have in the right hand, in enough hands, we have so many different combo pieces that we can usually just play through disruption without having to negate or stop it, and then we can just like be fine afterward. So, all right, that's going to go ahead and take care of that first game. Let's go and look at the next one. All right, so this next duel here is going to be against Branded Dragon Maid, which is a deck I've only come up against a couple of times, but every time I do, I keep thinking to myself like, huh, I might want to try that deck out. But it's like, yeah, so many different decks right now. Just all calling my name. So here we've got the Starliege Seyfert opening hand here. We are going second. We do have the Maxx and the Gamma, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this House Dragon Maid, just because, like, you know, I might not be like the most familiar with Dragon Maid, but I know enough to know that, like, yeah, they're gonna probably search the change over there and go for the Shio to set up a turn 1. Their turn 1 Omni Negate there, so I want to stop that from happening if possible, but of course since they opened the change over anyway, I was unfortunately not able to pull that off. However, I will say that we were at least able to get the Maxx off here, and I might be starting 1 card down, but our opponent's only starting with 2 cards, right? The Shio itself and the face down card, so really it's just 1 Omni Negate. Like, this card looks very scary, and it is scary. It's a big monster that can, again, Omni Negate and then bounce into another big and good monster. But you know, when you kind of break it down into thinking like, okay, what do I have to play through in order to make my plays go off? Because I know if I can make my plays go off, it doesn't matter how big their monster is. I can take care of it. It's not that big of a deal. So really the only thing I have to be concerned about here is the Omni Negate and then potentially the face down card. I think it could be a Tiding. I think is that the trap card that bounces a monster, a dragon monster on their board and a monster on my board. It's probably the most likely form of disruption, aside from something like an Imperm or a Call By or a Crossout potentially. So yeah, that's mainly what I'm thinking about here. And when I'm thinking about it in terms of like only having to play through those 1, potentially 2 disruptions, I'm not super duper concerned. So in response to the Shio's effect, I'm actually going to Call By the House Dragon Maid, even though the opponent does have 2 in the graveyard. This way, even if they bring back the other one, they're still not able to get a search off. Was the main reason I hit the Call By there. To not only hit the House Dragon Maid, or sorry, the Chamber Dragon Maid, to not only hit it this turn, but also next turn as well. So now I've denied my opponent 2 turns of searching with the House Dragon Maid, or the Chamber Dragon Maid, I keep saying that. Which, given, you know, given the game state right here, what the resources my opponent has access to, what I suspect they have face down, again, the Tiding to bounce this back to hand, and just knowing that they're going to be in top deck mode next turn, that's why I thought negating the Chamber Dragon Maid here was super duper important, because not only this turn it's going to stop the search, but again, I think on my opponent's next turn, if I don't win this turn, that's going to be their most likely avenue towards victory themselves to try to get something off the Chamber Dragon Maid. So in any case here, I've got the Seyfert and the Collapserpent here. Since I have the Collapserpent, I can actually just go ahead and add the Rokket Tracer. That is something I meant to touch on in the deck profile that I didn't get around to, is that it's not uncommon to open Seyfert plus Collapserpent. So if that's the case, you can definitely just pull out a Rokket Tracer or any other level 4 dragon monster you need. This is another reason why Seyfert is so good. It's fairly versatile. It doesn't just search Collapserpent or Wyverburster. It's definitely capable of searching more as well. So yeah, again, my opponent's Omni Negate is now out of the way, so I can, you know, just drop this Boot Sector launch without having to really worry about anything. I will then pivot into the Romulous to go for the Ravine. I still got the Tracer's effect. I'll go ahead and use that to pop the Boot Sector launch. Here comes a Tiding. I'm totally fine with it being used on the Romulous here. I'll even use Tracer's effect as a quick effect to go ahead and pop the Romulous instead of having to go back to the extra deck, so that way I can get a little bit of advantage off of it. Not that it really matters, again, we could have just popped the Boot Sector launch anyway, that we're gonna Actually, I don't know if we're going to play the Dragon Ravine this turn, or if we're going to overwrite the Boot Sector launch. I might end up keeping it around. Yeah, that's right, I did decide to keep it around. I decided to go into Borreload Savage Dragon here, equipping that Romulous I just popped, because that lets us battle over the House Dragon Maid. I've got an Omni Negate going into the opponent's turn. I know the opponent's card in hand is that Chamber Dragon Maid that got bounced, which I know is already going to be negated, so like, between that being negated, I can Omni Negate with Borreload the other card in the opponent's hand. Looking at their graveyard, they don't really have any like graveyard-based stuff like that they can do. Like, yeah, they can add this changeover back to hand and potentially use that, but that could also probably be negated by the Borreload Savage. And even if they do end up doing that, if they go into Shio or House, like, they can't get over this Borreload. This Borreload's kind of at a sweet spot here, a sweet number against Dragon Maid. 3,600 attack points means that the Shio, the strongest and most prominent boss monster, is not going to be able to run this over at all. And I don't think they have any attack boosting effects. They might have like a random incidental one that I'm not aware of, but I don't think they have any attack boosting effects that they can really utilize there. So they end up top decking Allurepar, which is a really good top deck for them. That means they can discard it, target my Borreload, and now neither of us, mainly me, can use Borreload Savage Dragon's effects for the remainder of the turn. So yeah, they'll summon the House Dragon Maid here. I always call it the House Dragon Maid, the Chamber Dragon Maid, attempting to get the search there. Well, I don't know if they're attempting to get the search necessarily, but long story short, it's still not going to be doing much of anything. They are still able to set up this changeover, like I mentioned, so yeah, they got a really good top deck that allowed them to stop my Omni Negate. But like I said too, they're going to go into the Shio here with 3,500 attack points. That's not really going to be like enough. It's just not going to be enough here, so yeah, so at this point, I'm very glad that I decided not to pop the Boot Sector launch, or that we had an opportunity to pop the Romulus instead, not only, of course, to equip to the Borreload, but now I can actually use the Boot Sector launch here on the opponent's turn as well. Follow up with a Chaos Space for the Levianeer here, too. Basically, the idea is that I think I'm going to use this Levianeer to force the Shio, and then when the Shio goes to activate the effect, I'll go ahead and use Borreload Savage Dragon's effect, and then we'll get a pretty easy lethal from there. I should have brought this Tracer back in attack mode. Unless, I think Boot Sector launch, you can bring it back in whatever position you want. No, it is in defense mode, never mind. But not a big deal here, I can just go ahead and, use the Tracer, pop the Boot Sector launch, just pretty easily get materials for another summon here. I think I might even still have my normal at this point. I do still have my normal summon at this point, so yeah, I can use this Ravine, send the Absorouter, go for the Rokket Synchron too, because, why not at this point? Ah, yes, and then the Dharc Charmer, because also, why not at this point? Just go ahead and steal that Chamber Dragon Maid that made this game such a pain for me. Well, would have made this game such a pain for me again had we not called by it during the opponent's turn. I think that was a key moment during this duel, and I don't know that that's necessarily something that everybody would have done. I definitely, debated back and forth of whether or not I wanted to do that, because I was kind of running the risk of getting, eating a hand trap a little bit later. But like I said, I decided the risk was worth it because it not only stopped the search the turn I played it, but also the opponent's next turn as well. And I knew on the opponent's next turn that search was going to be very, very important for them. So ultimately, I thought the call by there was the right call. And it actually did end up being the case. So, all right, let's go and take a look at the next game. Okay, so this game here is actually going to be against Umi Control. Good old Umi Control. I haven't actually, I think this is my first time playing against this deck. Weirdly enough, on regular or link ladder. In either case, I don't think I've actually played against this deck yet. So this is another going second hand, or going second duel, but this is definitely a going second hand. I didn't touch on this really in the deck profile, but another reason why I want to go down to 40 cards, not only for consistency's sake as far as getting combo pieces for Dragon Link, was also to be able to consistently get disruption when we go second here, because I do think that's a very notable weakness of the 60 card decks, is that going second is often really painful because it's very rare. I don't know about very rare, but it's a lot more rare that you're going to draw stuff like your Maxx, your Gamma, and your Ash Blossom, and I open all three with this hand. So that's another reason why I really like going second, or not going. Why I don't like going second with this deck, but why I like having as close to 40 as possible is to open as many going second cards as possible. There is definitely drawback to that. You can, if I'd gone first with this hand, I really wouldn't have that many options. So there is that drawback as well. And I have had games and hands where, I open a bunch of going second cards going first. But that can also happen to any deck. So, you know, I feel like I've played enough games, I've tested enough hands and enough of a sampling there that I think I like this balance here. It could still be improved upon. We'll see in the future. In any case here, opponent's going to start with Warrior of Atlantis. I am going to pop off the Ash Blossom here for a couple of reasons, honestly. One, I really did think about this because, again, I hadn't played against Umi Control. I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to get a better Ash target. Obviously, Umi, well, a Legendary Ocean, but any card that turns into Umi is very important to this deck, you know, being Umi Control. But I also know in particular that a Legendary Ocean will allow them to normal summon the Kairu Ryu, the big serpent that's basically goes in on legs. Yeah, the opponent can't special summon more than one non-water monster per turn, or just can't summon or special summon non-water monsters. Yeah, in any case, I'm really not looking to have that dropped on my exclusively light and dark deck. So I'm gonna make sure to take every precaution I can to make sure that does not happen. So definitely involves Ash Blossoming this Warrior of Atlantis here, which does end up resolving. And fortunately, I don't think they actually have a Umi follow-up. Well, they have a Pot of Prosperity here, which I'm not gonna be able to do too much in response to. They do actually end up finding a Legendary Ocean there, as well as their Kiryu Shin. I can actually read it since it got revealed here. You know, we all know Miku's card. Kiryu Shin, that's what it was. So, opponent does end up finding a Legendary Serpent, but fortunately they don't have the Kiryu Shin right off the bat. They do have the Electric Jellyfish, which you do have to be mindful of, but we can also hit with the Gamma if we need to. There's also the Fish Sonar here, attempting to add, looks like a big fish monster. Oh, and then special summon a water monster from the deck. I was like, why did I pop off Maxi here? I was like, oh yeah, the second effect. So, yeah, they'll attempt to respond with the Electric Jellyfish, but I fortunately have the Gamma here. So, yeah, looking at the opponent's resources they have left as opposed to, like, what we've got, I'm feeling pretty good about this setup here. We're able to stop a lot of the opponent's major plays here. They do end up searching the Kiryu Shin, especially in the Go Gaga Gaga Gigo. Did I say that right? Go Giga Gaga Gigo. I did actually say that, I think, on the first try there. Definitely, I think the biggest normal monster they can pull out with the Fish Sonar there. So that's a little scary, but it's just a big beat stick. It's not anything to worry about. Ice Barrier here is going to end up pulling the Kiryu Shin and then adding the or dumping the Kiryu Shin and then adding the Electric Jellyfish. So opponent's hand at this point, I believe, is the Jellyfish and the Kiryu Shin. So with that in mind, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is fine. I get to pretty much just combo off here, which would not have been the case, you know, had our opponent kind of gotten their plays off like they wanted to there. I want to show that game as kind of an example of, like, again, even if you're not familiar with a deck, like, even if you haven't played against it, you should still be generally aware of what's being played out there, and that'll help you play against the meta. This is a lesson that I always try to drive home, like, know the meta. I actually have, like, a Master Duel Academy video. Number 2 was, like, know the meta. Knowing the meta is so important. And again, even though this is my first game I've ever played against Umi Control, I still knew enough about it going in that I'm like, I know they've got the Kiryu Shin, I know that can stop me from summoning, so I know that needs to not come out. So again, preventing the, trying to prevent the Legendary Ocean Search there was I think, pivotal. Even though the opponent ended up having it anyway, I still think that was a pivotal moment in that game. So, alright, let's take a look at the next game here. Alright, so I think this is the last duel we're going to end up taking a look at for this video here. This is against, interestingly enough, it seems to be a blend between, like, Sword Souls and, like, a red deck, like Red Dragon, like Archfiend and stuff. So, I actually got another going second here. It's funny, these games have all pretty much been going second game, as the first game was it, but we also opened a dead going first hand, so... in any case, yeah, opponent's going to start by summoning searching for and then summoning the Crimson Resonator here. Yeah, I could have gammed that, but I decided to let it go. They got a Moye, which I've got, you know, multiple negates ready for, but they actually didn't end up getting anything off of it, which is nice. So they're just going to go straight for the Red Rising Dragon. This is another case where I kind of have to intuit, you know, what is the best point to disrupt the opponent here. Basically just trying to figure out when is the best time to drop, you know, the Valor and the Gamma. So like I said, I didn't do it in response to the Crimson Resonator. I could have Gammaed there, I think, unless this... Yeah, this is an activated effect. So, yeah, I could have Gammaed there in response to the Crimson Resonator, and that would have denied them their level 2 tuner. But they also would have still had a normal summon at that point. And that being the case, like, I decided to just go ahead and let them special summon it and then see if they would normal summon as a follow-up, or if they might go directly into a synchro that I would want to negate instead. So yeah, that's why I decided not to negate the Resonator there. And then the Moye came down. I thought, okay, here's a good potential Veiler / Gamma target. At that point, I was thinking of Veiling it and not Gammaing it. The Gamma being like a, the Gamma being more useful, I think, against either on my turn or against like a scarier monster to make sure it stays off the board, right? But like we just saw, the opponent did not end up activating Moye's effect, instead dropping Red Riser Dragon. Now that I know that, one, my opponent has used their normal summon, as well as a couple of resources in hand, and two, I know this Red Rising Dragon is going to let them go into a level 8 synchro, which level 8 synchros tend to be kind of scary. There's a lot of different options that they can get, so yeah, as I go to activate the Red Rising Dragon's effect here, I'm actually going to Veiler. And again, I'm not going to Gamma, I'm going to Veiler instead, because I want to save the Gamma for my turn. Also, Veiler can only be used on the opponent's turn. Gamma has more flexibility in that regard. So generally speaking, when using your Disruption, you want to use the more niche or like narrow use cards sooner, and then save the more generic or easily used cards for later. The Gamma, again, slightly more easy to use here, and potentially useful on my turn than the Veiler, so that's why we hit the Red Rising Dragon with the Veiler, not the Gamma. Plus, Red Rising Dragon, like, I don't really care if it gets negated and stays on board. That's not really a huge concern for me, so yeah, opponent's gonna Imperm our Striker Dragon, but with this hand, I'm not really too concerned about that. I think this is a hand where we can pretty easily get away with comboing off without the Boot Sector launch. The Boot Sector launch is a very, very important card, but I would not call it a vital or necessary one by any means. I'm going into the Romulous here, and I'm trying to think if we summoned a Seyfert, so we've used our normal summon already, but yeah, getting this Ravine to send the Absorouter Dragon to search for a rocket monster, I think is still going to be a pretty useful play, even though we've already used our normal summon. We could also still potentially, like, find a way to summon this rocket monster, this Rokket Tracer, pretty easily. Alright, so from here I'm going to go ahead and use the Chaos Dragon Levianeer's effect. I actually did manage to banish 3 light monsters to attempt to go for that effect, which normally it's kind of hard to pull that effect off. We summon and send a lot more dark monsters in light, but this was one of those rare scenarios where, like, 1, I had the opportunity to use the effect, and 2, it was actually fairly useful to use the effect. But alas, opponent decided that it was not in the stars for us to be able to summon back another combo extender. So I didn't really have many more options here as far as like getting more attack points on board. So I decided to just go into battle before linking away again here. Yeah, that's right. I was trying to figure out, like, I was just looking at my extra deck and I was trying to figure out, is there not any way I can extend further? Like, I could have, I don't know, I maybe could have gone into Quad, well, no, I couldn't have gone into Quadborrel, and it wouldn't have really done any good anyway, right? Well, I could have gone to Quadborrel, but, like, bringing those materials back wouldn't have really, well, I didn't actually have a rocket monster, right? Striker Dragon is not a rocket monster, so, yeah, that wasn't really an option. Dillingerous Dragon wouldn't have really done anything, so I decided to end on the Heavenly Seal and pass. Bit of a risky play, but actually not so, or actually much less risky than it might look, right? Because the opponent has 3 cards in hand. I've got the Seal as well as the Gamma and an Ash Blossom, and I know that, like, our opponent already, like, tried to do their combo out on their last turn, so whatever's left in their hand is very much less likely to be combo pieces. I also know that they don't have a Sword Soul or Worm card in hand because they don't have, or they didn't have something to reveal with Moye last turn, so it might be a bit awkward. It might seem a bit awkward to end on this board going into the opponent's turn like this, but I think it's fine here. Yeah, I'm actually going to pop off the Seal in response to the Lightning Storm, try to get the summon effect there. Opponent's got a Gamma. I'm actually going to go ahead and Ash Blossom it. Main reason I'm going to do that is not even because I care about the Seal Surge, but I don't want them to have the materials to summon a level 8 Synchro monster like I mentioned earlier, so yeah, it seemed clear now that the opponent, Lightning Stormed here, that was their intention, was to go ahead and do that. I also actually should have just used my Gamma the first time around. I always forget that Ash Blossom, like, Gamma is not a hard once per turn, or a once per turn at all. So if you Ash it, they'll still get an opportunity to activate it later. So I should have Gamma'd the first time. I had forgotten in the moment that you know, that was the case with Ash Blossom versus Gamma there. But yeah, we'll go ahead and just pull out a Rokket Tracer out just to say we did. And that's going to be enough for the opponent to concede. They only had one card left, and again, just based on how they played last turn, it was pretty apparent that that one card was not going to be an out for them. So, alright, that's going to go ahead and do it for those games. Let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright everybody, thank you for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That does mean a whole lot to me, not just personally, but as a means of supporting the channel as well. Also want to give a genuine thank you to those of you who are commenting and or subscribing. Comments, you know, I always love to see you, especially for decks, especially for this deck. Dragon Link is definitely that deck where I'm like, I very much have... I don't know. I'm getting more and more comfortable with it. I wouldn't say anymore that I have no idea what I'm doing. I definitely feel like, at least as far as like the deck building process goes, you know, I feel like I have a more solid idea of what needs to go into a Dragon Link deck. The gameplay aspect for this deck is definitely where I tend to be a little bit less confident, but I'm getting there, like I said, and it's getting easier, I think, the more and more I play this deck. I would very much like to work this into one of those like decks that's one of like, you know, it's in my regular repertoire of decks I regularly feature on the channel. I actually have been regularly featuring it pretty much since the Borreload came out there. But yeah, this deck is great. I have a lot of fun with it, and I'm not, you know, claiming by any means to be the best Dragon League player, but with all of your support, it definitely becomes a lot easier as well. So yeah, that's gonna go ahead and do it for the video there. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.